Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Guillaume Levrier. I'm a political scientist, and I work both at Sciences Po and at BNF. And thanks to the Respadon project, which Benjamin has mentioned, I was able to work for the past 3 years on implementing my software, my research software PANDORAE into the Web Archive, which I will present, and I will try to be as fast as possible on the things that you might already know. So one of the problems we have, or circumstances that we have here at BNF is that the data sets are very extensive, but they're on-site access only. So we have to build ways into those data sets in a way that is coherent, consistent, and relevant with the legal framework that is applicable. So to do that, I had to be embedded within the data lab here at BNF in order to be able to develop this solution. I'm a political scientist, I'm a researcher, so what I do is something that I try to call research, that is producing of scientific knowledge, which involves usually having a methodological strategy to pursue an epistemological purpose. So basically, I'm trying to build knowledge, but then that raises the question of what knowledge is, what we can call scientific knowledge. As you might all also know or be very well aware of, this is actually a very rarely and difficultly enforced label. Scientific knowledge today in the common language comes from what we call articles published in peer-reviewed journals, even though it varies from discipline to discipline. That's true for political science or economics or biomedical disciplines, but for example, for history, they prefer books, they prefer monographies. But de facto, today, most of science comes under the packaging of the article, which is problematic to some extent because reviewers that are supposed to vouch for the scientificity of what is being presented can rarely access either the data or the methods that are being used. They are just peer review today is mostly about the plausibility of the narrative rather than an actual checking of what is being presented. Hence the need for tools that are free, that are open source, whose source code is not only public but commented so that it's intelligible for most researchers or any users really, whose execution can be decentralized, which is also the case of Hive, but also PANDORAE, of course, and whose outputs are under the control of the user, which is also quite important because if your data is being sent to a different data cloud or service, you never know what's going to happen with it. And so even though you can have, of course, different machines, different versions, the data source can change as well. Usually, if you try to tick all those boxes, you end up having reproducible results, which is really what we aim for when we're trying to build science that is strong and that stands the test of time. PANDORAE does a lot of things, but basically it does those things in one order, that is harvesting data sets, standardizing those data sets. And to do that, I used the API and the software called Zotero that most of you must know. So basically, the purpose of PANDORAE is really to connect to APIs, abstract the resource sent by those APIs under the form of documents with or without content, depending on the legal framework that is applicable, and then provide visualization heuristics to explore those data sets. So in the context of the BNF, this involves retrieving the data at one step, then once it's retrieved, abstracting the data, so the captures of the web pages with their metadata to be sent to Zotero without the content because it's forbidden, because it's still protected by the applicable law, and then re-importing those metadata of those pages in order to build corpuses that can then be explored. So in order to make that clearer, the software itself is open source. However, the data, the web archives in the context of France are captive data. Doesn't mean that they're closed as in always inaccessible, but they're captive to the extent that you need to be there in order to be able to access to it. So right now, in the next 8 to 10 minutes, I will try to show you how it works by showing my screen. I am right now within the the BNF data lab. So I am on a machine that has access to that specific network. So the AI labs engine, so it's Archives de l'Internet, not artificial intelligence. It's a front end that lets you basically query the archive. So right here, I'm going to look for the keyword Fanon, which is the patronym of Frantz Fanon, a French philosopher that finished his life in Algeria in the context of the elections. So PANDORAE only works on indexed, full text indexed with links data sets of the web archives at the BNF, which is a small part of the total, while Hive, for example, works on everything because it crawls the archives. So in the case of the BNF, the data set that is mostly indexed is elections from 2002 to 2010. So in that context, we will look for Fanon on the year 2002. And so when we do that through this form, because it is full text indexed, we have a list of hits, and we know all the captures that do have this keyword in them. So once we know that there are actual results, what we can do is do this little ride, this little circle to retrieve this data and save it and explore it in PANDORAE. So this is what PANDORAE looks like. It has, as you saw, a flux system. There it is. Small computer it's struggling a little bit, but we'll try to make it work. Here you find something that looks a lot like the form that you saw before. So you have field query, you have a date from which you start, and another one from which you stop, to which you stop. That's a bit far in time. And you select the collection that you want to reach. And when you do that, you get a result. So that's the year, that's the collection. You only have half because I'm grouping web pages by, like many captures from the same page will be only one document, which is different from the front end that you saw before that had twice the amount of results, but they were taking all the captures into account. And then you have an idea of how many what are the top domains for that query, and on this one we're back on the captures and not on the groups, which is why you have such important numbers. So I'm not going to do the request right now because we might not have time for that, but once you've done that, what you can do is send it to Zotero, and it will look like something like that. So this is my Zotero account. You will see other requests that I've done, and so what you will see inside is that you have the title of the web page, you have the URL within the archive, and you have like very basic metadata that have been stringified in the short title property of Zotero, even though in a more recent version of PANDORAE, it's now becoming a note because this field is being restricted right now. But basically, you can have a curation step at that stage, even though you don't have that many information to work with. But for example, if you know that you only want one type of website, you can create a sub-collection, use Zotero to do your curation or enrich the data manually without having to be on site. And also it's quite, I mean, Zotero is quite a powerful SQL database behind the scenes with this administration panel. So it's UI, so it's pretty good for that purpose. Once you're done, you can re-import your corpus within PANDORAE. And if PANDORAE is within the walls of the BNF, then it becomes able to reach back to the the Solar Wayback storage of the web archives here and give you more details on the content. So when you re-import from Zotero, you only take metadata, but that metadata is enough to call the actual web page that's behind. So you have a list here of all the subdomains and domains that are relevant to the query. So we'll take that one. So what you see right here is that we have two websites that are very linked because this Christiane Taubira was a presidential candidate in 2002 in the French elections, and Planète Radicale was the website of her political party called the Parti Radical. And so the blue dots are page captures, and the gray dots are page that this capture links to. So for example, that page right here, we know that this blue dot links to that page. but we don't know whether it's within the archives or not. So first I'll click a blue dot right here. So when you click it, PANDORAE sends a request to the Solr, and the Solr tells several things. It tells all the captures that you have, and you can look through the captures by clicking the little dots. So it loads the relevant capture. And you can also look for a string, any string, doesn't have to be that one, but I know that this one will be present within the content. And so this way you can see whether your subject of interest varies through time. So you see that I've clicked those little nodes and the part that was highlighted remained the same. So for the sake of what we are interested in, that is Frantz Fanon, it didn't move, it didn't budge. So I don't have to look at probably don't have to look at all the captures. And once I'm done, or I found one that is particularly interesting, I can just copy the permalink. And if I have the archives open, I'm not going to do it right now because it's too much for my computer, but we can have a look at the content of the page within the web archive. For those ghosts nodes, the only way to know whether they're in the archive or not, well, first, we know that if they are in the archive, they do not have the term that we look for, because if that was the case, there would be blue dots. But we can still maybe look for them. The best way to do that right now is just to click on it. And if it's not found, it means that it was not harvested back in the days. So yeah, basically that is how it works. And the idea is that you would explore those corpuses as deeply as you can by clicking all those little nodes and try to find how your subject of interest was being mentioned in that website. And if you need to, have a look at the actual web page as it was captured back in the days. In order to make that work easier, we also built little notebooks on the side that let you do that exploration more thoroughly, which I'm not going to present to you right now, but I can link to if you are interested. And in the end, the way that we developed this approach, as I showed you, I tried to show you, it's quite a tricky way to proceed, to have a request and then abstract away this request as documents that only have some of the metadata, but not all of the metadata, so that it builds a corpus that you can use, but you cannot access the content until you come back, and then you can have a look at the actual content within the walls of the BNF. This tension that we have to work with, we tentatively call it a one-way mirror model. And in this allegory or little metaphor, we say that basically the web archive is like a suspect in an interrogation room that can only tell you their truth. So it's the capture that they did. Doesn't mean that it was exactly like this when it was captured, that the robot did a very good job, but it's what is left of that time within the archive, which has three consequences. So you can harvest the data when you're in the room, that is in the data lab, but you do not have any way to change the room itself or the content itself. So you cannot change the memory of the suspect that you are talking to. You can take parts of the records, so in our case, part of the metadata, but you cannot interrogate it when you're away. So when you're at home, all you have left, or at your lab, all you'll have left is the metadata. And then you can come back for a highlight for a specific piece, or to explore a corpus, or to rebuild that as something that you can explore. But you cannot take the whole body out of the room. So you can ask questions, but you cannot take full web pages outside of the premises of the BNF. Even though what you can do is you can do quotes of parts of those web pages that are relevant to the point you're making for the sake of your research. Thank you for your attention.